episode of Humans of Campus Housing. Today, we're excited to sit down with EJ, a seasoned professional in campus housing and an early recipient of the ACUHO-I ResLife and housing qualifications. EJ, if you want to give us a little bit more insight into what brings you on or what some of your background is, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for having me on today. Currently, I serve as the Executive Director of Housing and Residence Life at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. We also have another campus out in Prescott, Arizona, for some people that may be in other parts of the country. But I've spent my career in housing, so all 14 years of it. Started as a residence life coordinator and worked my way up to this position now. And I was very interested in the student affairs certification that was coming up and that was started being offered a couple of years ago. I'm very excited to be a part of that pilot program and to try it out and see what could happen for me professionally. And so excited to talk a little bit more about that and kind of what that's been able to do for me in my career so far over these last couple of years.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in campus housing and actually what first drew you into this field?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the drawing me in first. And I probably, I would think a number of either housing or student affairs professionals. I got involved with my residence hall association very early on in my college career. So I did my hall council, then was a part of my residence hall association for the next 3 years as an undergraduate student, and through that time and through working with professionals over there, a lot of support and saying, hey, this could be a field that you should consider and that you would be really good in. And so I had a completely different undergraduate major. I got my undergraduate degree in astronomy, but then I went to higher ed, my grad program for higher education administration, or mine was student personnel and higher education. And I did that for a number of years, had a couple of different graduate assistantships in a few different areas. I did some housing internships through ACUHO-I as well in the summer, and then got my first professional position as a residence life coordinator. And then worked there for a couple of years, 4 years supervising RAs, then moved into an assistant director position, kind of a hybrid, doing some residence life work, but then also now starting to do some operational work and looking at our housing assignments and processes and housing applications for that. And then took a job here at Embry-Riddle, my first job as the associate director of university housing. We're kind of in a trifurcated system at that time, again mostly dealing with operations, and then our housing and residence life groups came back together as one department, and then I kind of slowly worked my way up doing operations until I became the director in 2019, and now back to doing housing and the residence life piece for both of those. And so it's been a really great journey to be able to experience a number of different areas within housing and within our field and be able to see both sides and work with that. But excited to be able to oversee both. And we've also had just a lot of great growth here at Embry-Riddle. We've opened 3 new residence halls since I've been here. So I think it's been exciting to be a part of that for as long as I have been.
Seems like you did a lot. Actually, very interesting that you studied astronomy. That's was not expecting to hear that at all. I think that's going to be a conversation for another.
It was a passion area, of mine, like growing up, and I didn't necessarily need to have a specific undergrad degree to apply to the grad program, and so something that's really important to me. I'm sure I've forgotten a lot of the equations over that time, but something I still have a passion for, and I have a little Lego like sun and earth behind me and going, and so it's always something that is a passion of mine.
You have a lot of really great qualifications. How has that influenced your approach to student housing thus far, and what impact do you think they'll have on the field overall?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been fortunate to work at a number of different institutions. I think anywhere anywhere you go in your career, I think that has an impact on how you view, at least in my opinion, how you view your current role, and everything that you can learn from either the people that you worked with, the people that supervised you, the students that you interacted with, or what that campus community is like, has made an impact on me. And so I draw from all those types of experiences. So I've been at large public, I've worked at mid-sized public, I've worked at smaller privates, now more at a private university. And granted, I've been here for quite some time now. It's the longest place that I've worked in my career, but we've had a lot of change and a lot of growth. And I think that helps me kind of frame, all right, what do we want to continue to see on campus as well. I think my being able to professionally develop, go to conferences and network with other people in the field, be able to learn about best practices. I think that's something that's really important to me, and definitely members of my team as well, is how can we always sort of look to improve what we are doing, and those conversations with other people in the field, I think help that as well, because they may be going through some of the same things that we're seeing, or they may be seeing the same issues that we're seeing with our students, and maybe they've handled it a different way that we may not have necessarily thought of. And so I think that's really critical for helping us improve. And I'm a big supporter of professional development for my team. And again, whether that's in person or webinars or something else that they can do virtually, but always a big proponent of that to help us continue to improve our experience for our students here on our campus.
Absolutely. So, Elizabeth, I think you have a couple questions when it comes to the qualifications. What are your insights on that?
So thanks for joining us, EJ. I guess my first question is really about, so you have a master's in student affairs. You've got a lot of professional experience. Why do we need to be certified? Like, I'm really interested in this. So I too don't have a background in student affairs. I have 3 degrees, none of which are in student affairs, but I still hold a senior director role at a large state institution where we have a significant budget and almost 10,000 beds. And so I've worked in the university side, I've worked in the private side. Tell me, why do we need a certification? Like, what does it do and who's it for?
Yeah, I think those absolutely. I think those are great questions. I can tell you from me personally, when I first learned about it, and again, I was kind of part of that initial early pilot program back in I think it was the end of 2022 is when it came. I know for me, I have not been yet at the point where I have my master's degree. I'm not the point ready to pursue another terminal degree beyond that for myself, given just the point in life that I am. And so I saw it as an opportunity to kind of verify everything that I had learned as a professional. I had learned in grad school, learned throughout my time as a professional, to say, yeah, I have all of this information. I know that this information that I can do, but I think also, to justify that, but then also to say, hey, I have these certifications. When I speak to faculty, when I speak to campus partners, when I speak to other people, I know a little bit. I don't know everything, and I'll always be the first to say that. But I know enough about these things in student affairs, and specifically then the specialty certification in housing and residence life, to be somewhat of an expert on some of these things, given the certification and what we had to do. And I think that just gives a little bit more credibility to the conversations that I am trying to have, and then also to my experiences as a professional in the field.
Okay, thank you. Ben, what about you? I mean, I know you also have a certification. So
yeah, DJ, thanks again for being here. Always good to see you. And I want to provide a little bit of clarification. The certification specifically that we're talking about is the certification for student affairs educators, which is through the consortium that is supported at a base level by a lot of national organizations. So we're talking ACUHO-I, which Leo mentioned, NASPA, ACSA, NERSA, a lot of the national student affairs affiliates, right? And there's what, EJ, 6 or 7 different specialty certifications. So you have to receive the core certification, and then if you want to, you can receive the specialty certification. So EJ and I are both certified for the core and then for the housing and residence life one. And we're part of that group. And just like EJ, I was part of the kind of initial trial run group with this, and there was a steep discounted price for participating in it at that time. And there was really no guidance, right, in terms of how to study or prepare or what it was going to be like. And they're still figuring a lot of that out, right? And so for me, there's a couple of different perspectives. One, the cost was a huge thing for me, and the timing of it worked out well for me as well. And I also just have this like really strong desire to be an early subscriber to some things. And then with my role with ACUHO, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a few minutes, I wanted to make sure that regionally that we were a part of this new initiative that was coming on, right? To see all of these national organizations say that we believe in this and we are willing to attach our names, and there's some pretty substantial names when it comes to student affairs, to this certification. That really said a lot to me, right? And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm not sure about this, because my path, as we talked about in the past, was kind of more traditional in terms of, I did the undergrad experience, I was an RA, and then I went and get my student personnel degree, and, kind of, and like EJ, kind of worked my way up through things, and my undergrad degree was in business. I think that I can see, because especially now, when that path isn't the norm anymore, right? Like coming up through a higher ed or a student personnel program is not necessarily the norm. I think that a certification like this, because it requires you to spend a little bit of time practicing and really becoming familiar with your craft to a certain degree, and then saying that, hey, I really do understand this on a basic level, even though I might not have this background. And if I do have this background, it's kind of an affirmation. And maybe the timing isn't right for you to go get a terminal degree, right? And I'm in a place where I was ABD in a program. I've been withdrawn from that program. I actually just submitted my application last week for a new EDD program. And so, I am going to be pursuing that at some point. But in the meantime, this was a good opportunity for me.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up the doctoral program piece, because the doctoral program, I have a PhD, and what that taught me is it taught me how to ask questions and how to find information. It also taught me about how to do research, but I chose specifically to do a PhD versus an EDD, right? And that's a whole other episode, I think. But I think it's quite interesting, because for me, a professional certification is not, the point is not a terminal degree, right? Because I think to your point, right, I didn't go get a doctorate in housing and residence life, but I did my research on housing and residence life. And so I guess, my question to y'all is that how has your, like, what advantage does this give you? I mean, EJ, you talked a little bit about it, but I think that if there's a lot of conversation about how we need to retain staff. There's a lot of conversation about the future of the profession. Is this really just an exercise in self-protection to say, look, we're professionalized, we have a certificate now, you can, it's got a trademark on it, so come join us because we're cool? Or is this really about improving the profession? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my mind it is. I know for me, the other part of all of this is the continuing education piece of it. It's not just doing the or getting the certifications and then you are done and that is it, and doing those exams. And I think that continuing education piece is really important. And I think for some people, they're always on the pulse of lots of different opportunities that are out there. But I think this has been really helpful for me to identify lots of different professional development opportunities that I may not have had or seen before, because there are definitely some things that gets consolidated, and the consortium does a good job of sharing that information to be able to do that, and just participating in just certain activities, or going to certain conferences and focusing on some specific sessions they may not have thought of, but the consortium says that this is going to be used as a continuing education credit for you, and it also just not necessarily keeps me honest, but keeps me on a schedule in terms of making sure that I'm staying professionally developed and continuing to hone my craft each year to do the recertification.
I think that's a very good point. And actually, maybe it then also it helps us to professionalize our professional development, right? And then how do we choose what is a CIA, a continuing education credit, and what's not? So I think that the maintenance track, so to speak, around that is quite interesting. So thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, the continuing education thing has definitely been interesting because I have been working through CIHO with ACUHO-I about using some of our programmatic efforts to be available for continuing education credits, and that has been an interesting process because there's a whole set of criteria that the consortium has set up. Where EJ and I could go in individually and say, hey, I attended this thing and it has to do with my job, or it has to do, it's a good point of professional development. But then the consortium would have to review that and say, yeah, okay, this meets our criteria, and we do approve that for an hour or whatever. But ACUHO-I is already approved as a kind of a pre-approver, right? And so they've gone through the training, they know the criteria. And so like 2 years ago in Portland at Campus Home Live, there were 7 or 8 offerings for continuing education credits, and this year there were dozens. I mean, almost any session that was generally in 3 different areas. It could have been in core, in the specialty, or in social justice and inclusion, which is one of the other criteria we have to meet throughout the course of the 5 years. And so CIHO this coming year at our conference, we will actually be submitting our program slate to ACUHO-I to review, and hopefully have a couple dozen programs that will count as continuing education credits. And then kind of going back to a further point that you made, the one thing I wanted to be careful of with CIHO was like making sure that we weren't extending an unnecessary amount of resources for a small group of people, because it is a small group of people right now, right? And I want to be mindful of that. But I think that's kind of the catch-22 with this whole thing right now. And to answer your question about the value of it, and I think as EJ and I have sat in certificate meetings for ambassadors and people who have this, I think trying to articulate that value is still something that is very much in its infancy, because I don't know that anybody has said, this thing has helped me in X way, right? It has helped me to get a job. It has helped me to get a publication or something like that. And, I could see where, all things considered equal, if you're applying for a position and, you have this one certification, then, maybe that would push you over. But, it's hard to say. And I think the thing that gives me a little bit of solace is, again, those national organizations have said, we're bought into this, right? And they are pouring resources, they are pouring time into trying to make this something that's significant. And I think that they're going to continue to search for ways to embed this into the overall culture. And so it's very much a moving target.
Well, I think you bring up a good point there, because I think one of the powerful things about NHTI, once it had a history, was that people did research on it, and they would show that attendance in NHTI, resulted that there was a correlation there around promotion and kind of in the field. So yeah.
So I think what we can get from this is it definitely does help open doors as well as allow you to understand um, everything else in a more broader aspect of everything. But what I'd like to know, EJ, is what are some things that the certification did not teach you that you wish that perhaps it did now looking back at it?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know if it didn't teach me anything, but at least when I went through it and I did it, you would go and you would basically took a test, and so you took a proctored timed test and had questions on a number of the general student affairs one, and then you had the housing and residence life specific one for us, and it gave you a readout at the end of certain areas within student affairs and then housing and residence life and kind of where you fell within that. I wish that would have been a little bit more detailed for me, because you got an idea of, it kind of told you where you were on the baseline for that to get the certification, but you couldn't necessarily see like the specific answers of the ones you got right and wrong. What specific area within assessment or within facilities, what specific areas within that were did I need to look at and improve on? I think it was helpful overall to be like, okay, that's an area that I can look at focusing a little bit more on in my work, or trying to connect with more, or tailoring some of my continuing education opportunities to that. But what specifically, and because some of those are very broad as well, I think would have been helpful to kind of direct a little bit more where I go with the continuing education pieces of that.
Ben, what do you think about that? Also coming from qualifications, like, do you think that you agree with some of that? Is there something that maybe perhaps you could add to that?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, from my perspective, having done this over 20 years, I don't know that I necessarily learned anything from it, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that was my intent for going into it, right? I will say that it was very affirming for me,
Okay.
and in the same way, also very humbling. Like it wasn't necessarily a simple test. Like, it wasn't the GRE. Don't get me wrong, but like it wasn't necessarily a simple test, and it was a significant dedication of time. And I think it did. I think it was very comprehensive, and kind of incorporating all of these concepts and ideas that we do utilize on a daily basis, and really, again, kind of affirming, okay, maybe after 20 years you really should be doing this, right? You do have some chops for this, and there is some, you do have some credibility within the field. I think that, again, as we move forward, the interesting thing is going to be for the younger professionals who are within, because I think the consortium suggests that you have at least 5 years before full-time experience before really trying to engage in this. I think it'll be more of a litmus test for those professionals, as younger professionals who maybe are looking to add on the certification, in terms of how that assessment might develop and carry some weight.
So I have a final question here for you. Do you guys think that this certification is going to change graduate preparation for higher education students, the master's and doctorate levels? Do you think it's going to change the curriculum? Do you think that this is going to be like you graduate from law school, you have the bar, you graduate from a student affairs program, you take this test, maybe it's the core test, maybe it's a test, and then you can choose a yes or no. What do you think? Is it going to change curriculum?
I would, I mean, I think if it's kept at that, hey, you have to have 5 years of something, a professional experience. I think that's going to be hard unless that changes.
Yeah, good point.
But I could also see a yes where, like, again, if all these organizations feel like this information is critical to understanding or being a professional in this, in student affairs or in these specialty areas, that I think it would probably behoove them and us to have those conversations with graduate programs about what is being taught.
I'll follow that up with saying I don't think so. I think it could influence the curriculum within those programs some, but I know that, kind of us who have been through higher education programs, we know that depending on which institution you're at, generally there's a strong affinity at those institutions towards specific organizations, right? Whether that's a national organization, ACPA, NASPA, or a regional one, whether it be CIHO or SACSA or some other regional association. And that's often driven by the faculty, right? And so,
faculty are not practitioners, Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So it gets what's the point? Like, what's the point of having? I mean, I think we can go in this kind of spiral around this, but I think that's a very interesting point. Yeah.
And I think it could be, it could make an interesting like practicum course during a higher ed or something like that. Like that would actually maybe make some sense, a seminar or a practicum or something like that, to really kind of dig down into these, because again, there's nothing that says that I, as a housing and residence life professional, cannot go out and test for the one for student conduct or the one for union management or campus rec. And there's an argument there. And I think part of this is that if I wanted to spend time studying about those different functional areas, then as a way to kind of diversify my portfolio, I could go and get all of these certifications and have union management, conduct, fraternity and sorority life, all these different specialty certifications. Now, that would be a boatload of continuing education credits that I would have to pursue, and I would never impose that upon myself because, good Lord. But I could, right? Anybody could. So I think that there's, an argument there as well.
Yep. And does book of knowledge equal street knowledge?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting intersection of that, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So, EJ and also Ben, if you want to give a little input here for young professionals who are actually looking to get those qualifications, do you have any advice that you might want to give them? Anything that maybe perhaps you would have asked yourself, at some point before going into and pursuing that?
That's it. I will say, I think what I will say is that I think there are more resources now that this has had a couple of years to go. There are more resources now for professionals that are thinking about doing. I think it was very different for Ben and I going through the pilot program of, we had a rough outline of things to look at and know and to those exams, but you still didn't fully exactly know what to really expect on there. I think the consortium has done a good job of providing more resources and building out more information about what that looks like to help professionals be more prepared about that. And so again, I would encourage them, to go on the website to look at what's out there and see if that is the best fit for them. But I think there's more out there for them to be able to make a better educated decision on what that could mean for them.
Yeah, someone's going to write and sell a study book.
Right. I think EJ's point's exactly right. Ask the questions, right? The consortium's working to make themselves more available at different conferences, both on a national and regional level. They're available online. And then, maybe this is not, maybe test taking is not your jam, right? Like a lot of people don't test well. And,
good point.
But then again, maybe it is. Maybe like you're just that person that intuitively gets it, right? And so again, from a professional standpoint, you have to decide where to allocate your resources, whether that's money or time, because again, the continuing education thing is substantial. Like it's not a little thing. Like there's a lot of credits that you have to accumulate over time. And so we have a colleague in the region who has 3 certifications, and I'm like, you're nuts. I don't know why you would be.
I'm like, are they doing their job? That's my question. Like,
well, yeah, this individual, if you know this individual, like he definitely is, but it's again, not something I would do to myself, right? Two was very much enough, and only time will tell what the true value of this is. And so, I think that is one of my big takeaways is that, again, the national organizations have said we see some value in this, and those are kind of the stalwarts of our community, and I want to play a part in supporting that as well, which is why I have worked to make sure that CIHO does have a part in doing that, and providing continuing education credits as well, and tabling. They'll be at the conference tabling as well. So yeah.
I thank you guys. I'm not sure I'm totally convinced yet, but I'm interested in looking more into it. So
Sure.
Yeah, well, hopefully there'll be another episode, or maybe perhaps we can continue to to help Elizabeth with getting her more on board. As we wrap up this episode, actually, EJ, I wanted to ask you, where can people find you, and what are some other resources that perhaps you'd like to plug in for more information on what we just talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to find me, they can find me on Embry-Riddle's website. Also, if they want to find me on Facebook, Instagram, or anything like that, LinkedIn, please feel free. My profile is out there if people want to connect in that way, and have some more one-on-one conversations about certification. If they want to do that, please feel free to reach out to me in that way. I think just the other resources and things that I'm involved in. I mean, ACUHO-I and ACUHO are big things, and so I think especially for a housing and residence life certification, I think there's good information on those areas, and connecting with professionals in those organizations. If you're in that region, obviously, if you're in other regions, you have your own regional associations as well to do that. But I think those are great places to look at. And then if you still have your textbook, you still have some things from your grad program, those are some good places to look in and start getting some information as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, EJ, for being on the podcast. And this is the moment where I will hand it off over to Ben to sign us off.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning into the Human of Campus Housing podcast today. It's always our hope that our conversation has helped you in some way, connected to your personal or professional experiences, or that it inspires you to take this back and continue the further discussion. If there's any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, please reach out and let us know. And of course, we hope that you will like, share, and subscribe to the Humans of Campus Housing podcast. In this crazy world, please take care out there. Look after your students, care for your people, and most importantly, take care of yourself and find ways daily to refill your cup. A special thanks again to EJ for being here today, and for you all taking time to be with us. For Elizabeth and Leo and everyone associated with the Humans of Campus Housing podcast, thank you for joining us.